Hello, everyone. Hello, and welcome to our third edition of Cloud Security London. We are here back on Twitch for our second online event. As always, fortunately, we can't be in person, but we hope everyone's keeping safe in these uncertain times. I'm here joined by Dean, my brother, and co-host of the event. And we've got some great speakers lined up for you today. So we'll just do a quick introduction, and then we will dive straight into our content in just a few moments. Dean?
Yeah, so we've got, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us again for our second version, our third event, but our second version online. So thanks for coming back. Just some initial housekeeping to get started. We have the chat wherever you're watching on Twitch or YouTube. Let's have a chat in the chat and ask questions to our great speakers as they're giving their content. Let's keep the conversation going. Let us know how you're getting on, what the weather's like, what you've been drinking, if you've got a cup of tea or not. Anything like that, just let's keep the conversation going like we would in person if we were there. Steve's got his tea. I'm on the water today, so nothing too exciting. Maybe
it's actually water in this cup.
Who drinks water from a mug? That's a bit weird.
No, it's a bit of a rush.
So yeah, just keep the conversation going. Say hi in the chat. There's, as usual, we've got two great speakers. We've got Martin and Dennis, both talking about some interesting topics. One focused on Azure and one on AWS. So a real multi-cloud kind of event. Although Martin's will have some Azure involved as well, and some AWS involved as well as Azure. As usual, after that, we'll have a quiz and some giveaways. So there'll be some prizes to give away at the end. We've got a bit of a budget to give away some prizes. So stay along for the much anticipated quiz. After each, after, I'm just saw Tom's Gilly Willy's message in the chat. You're recovering from a birthday hangover. That's why we're drinking water. It was mine and Steve's birthday yesterday. So we were celebrating another birthday. So we, a few alcoholic beverages may have been consumed, Tom, for sure. Lots of water today. So yeah, we'll have questions during the chat. If you send them into Twitch, I'll kind of curate the questions and Steve will, and then at the end we'll come back in and we'll join the speakers and we'll go through the questions. Ask questions, have fun, and yeah, enjoy it. And we'll have a chat and some questions in the thing. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Martin, who's going to talk to us about threat hunting in the cloud. Martin's a bit of a the topic he's going to be talking about, he was recommended to us as a speaker, given that it's a topic that he knows very well. It's a name that I'm very familiar with. And yeah, I'm really excited to bring you on, Martin, and over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And great that we can do this online. And thank you for having me. And indeed, I'll be talking about Azure Sentinel, but specifically in the context of AWS. So the presentation is called Threat Hunting in the Cloud. And we'll talk about malicious behavior in AWS and how to collect it, and specifically also a real-world case on Capital One. And I'll be sure to have some demos, so I don't want to bore you with slides just yet. So my name is Maarten Goed. Some people know that I'm an MVP. I just got renewed today, so that's really great. And I'm also regional director, which is again a community title. And I run the enterprise security unit at Wortel. So that's where I got the experience from, working with Microsoft Threat Protection and Azure Sentinel. Now, just making sure that everybody's on the same page, Azure Sentinel is a new service that Microsoft launched last year. That's essentially a cloud-native SIEM. And because it lives in the cloud, it gives you some cloud speed and scale. And the scale is, of course, handy because of the number of events you might be collecting. But certainly the cloud speed is handy because if you want to run machine learning models and all sorts of other nifty things, then you could use that power from Azure. And some of these machine learning models are already built in, and I'll show you so you can take advantage of those. There are some easy integrations for services that live within the Microsoft world, but also that live outside of the Microsoft world. And I'll show you in this specific case with AWS. And because it's a cloud service, you just pay for what you use. Now, we can go all the way up from the network stack to the cloud services. So we can ingest events from your favorite network vendor. There are a couple of here on the slides. We can ingest events from the OS, but we can also ingest events from modern services like Kubernetes or some of these cloud services mentioned there. And of course, some of the other clouds like Google GCP or Amazon AWS, which I'll show you. Now, we're getting events, and one of the things we want to try and achieve in Azure Sentinel is report off of use cases, because some of these individual alerts might give you a false positive, but if you start combining events, you will get a better true positive. So let's imagine that you have some identity protection system, let's say Azure AD, and you get an alert about an unusual login that could still be somebody who is traveling, at least pre-corona, I would say. But adding a second source that then gives you information from the network on that the login was done from an anonymous IP, let's say a Tor exit, then it's already raising suspicion. Maybe combining a third event about quite quickly after seeing some potential suspicious PowerShell on an endpoint. And lastly, for instance, combining a signal from another source, maybe one of your CASBs, that tells you that there was an inbox forwarding rule created and that you then understand the bigger picture. Hey, there's possible data exfiltration. That's really the purpose of a SIM, to give you the bigger picture on top of all of these sources, and of course some orchestration and actionable platform to then respond to these threats. And this is how such a typical threat and use case alert could be displayed, again, on the mailbox exfiltration example. Now, these machine learning models that Azure Sentinel has are called Fusion. What it takes is a lot of learning and effort that Microsoft has put in already other services and takes it onto Azure Sentinel. So it's collecting events, for instance, for 50 billion plus network events, a lot of identity events, mailbox endpoints, and then applying a probabilistic kill chain machine learning model to really narrow them down, and then some priority scoring to get down to, in this case, roughly 25 high fidelity incidents. And we'll have a look in the console in a couple of minutes where we see these models displayed to you. And the example here on screen is the advanced multi-stage attack detection that then alerts you on, for instance, tactics in persistence, lateral movement, command and control, and such. Now, one of the powerful features is that Azure Sentinel provides you with advanced hunting, and not only text-based where you do the queries and then information pops up. There's also a graphical user interface where I can pivot into a alert or an incident and then start to understand what resources are impacted, what was the timeline of such, and get more information and to work with those. So the advanced hunting is certainly something that people are quite excited about. And then if you combine it with some of the other security products, it gives you quite a bit of coverage around the kill chain. So for instance, on the app side, on the devices side, identity. And for those who don't know the products, there's a list below. And I just wanted to put this in here because I'll be sharing the slides so that you get an understanding of how we could combine with all of these security sources. Now, the case study I wanted to present today was the one from Capital One. Capital One is an American bank holding company that actually specializes in credit cards, auto loans, banking, and more of those loans. It had 2 years ago roughly about 755 branches and roughly 2,000 ATMs, over 28 billion in revenue that year and 372 billion in assets. So that's a big company, and they were headquartered in the US in McLean, Virginia. Now, they disclosed on July 29, 2019, that they suffered a security breach and that a lot of the information from people and their loans and specifically also credit cards were then found publicly, and people tried and abused those. Through forensics analysis, they found unauthorized access 10 days earlier, so mid-July, and it was believed to be done by one individual. And it had access to all of these accounts and identities of just over 100 million US people. So big impact. The FBI then arrested Paige Thompson, who was previously an AWS engineer. And according to the public information, Thompson's hacking activity occurred in March of 2019. And she posted what she had then exfiltrated out of Capital One in April, a month later, and that became the April 21 files, which then held all of that information on these American people. Now, there was a trove of leaked data, again, on credit cards and other loans and such, but it also contained information on how to access Capital One credentials so that other people could even exfiltrate more data, which was worrisome, of course. Luckily, in July, a white hat hacker alerted Capital One of the breach, and then things started moving, and FBI was involved. Now, there was a complaint that was published online on the American Justice website. And if you read that complaint, then we get a better understanding of how the attack went down. And if you look, then it's that it involved exploiting a server-side request forgery flaw, so a vulnerability in a web application. And then she obtained AWS access keys to a highly permissive, so an S3 full access identity and access management role, which then gave her access to a lot of S3 buckets and such. She could then start to find these S3 buckets that contained sensitive files and then exfiltrate, in essence, copy the data to storage that she controlled. So that's in 4 steps, I guess, how it went down. Now, to be on the same page and use the same language, it's good to understand that there's this non-profit organization called MITRE that publishes a framework called ATT&CK, and it establishes a common language and framework for us to talk about this breach, about the attack vectors and the methods that she used and other attackers are using. And it's becoming the de facto standard in the industry. So it helps us deconstruct the cyber kill chain, in essence. And I wanted to quickly show you a couple of things on MITRE before we move on. So let me open up my browser. I need to share that back again. Share screen. And it should be coming up soon. There it is. So MITRE can be found on this URL, attack.mitre.org. And there are some matrices that you can have a look at. The one that's enterprise, so the one that's cloud. There are specific mobile matrix as well. And what they try and do is name the various tactics, so the phases, if you will, the steps in a kill chain, like initial access, persistence, and all the way down to exfiltration of data. And then the various TTPs, so techniques, tactics, and procedures for attackers to use. And if you click on one of those, like I'd like to understand more about the AWS matrix and understand, for instance, how they could abuse a cloud instance metadata API, you can click on it and it gives them an ID like T number 1522. It gives information on the mitigations, how it's being abused, et cetera, et cetera. And so we can have a look at this matrix to understand what potential attack vectors an attacker has. Now, if you want to do like an assessment for your company, or you want to mark maybe a certain attacker that's trying to achieve something, there's also this interactive one that's called the Attack Navigator that you can have a look at. And it takes JSON files to really map back for your company and for your coverage. I just wanted to quickly step in here because from this point on, I'll be talking about these T numbers. And again, they relate to the attack vectors that these, in this case, allegedly Page had used or other attackers are using. So let's get back to the presentation. Here we go. So non-profit org, really good to have a look at and understand more about. So for this specific attack on Capital One, there's essentially 5 TTPs, so procedures, tactics, or techniques that she used. 2 in initial access, 1 in credential access, and 1 in collection, and 1 in exfiltration. She used an exploit public-facing application because of the SSRF in the web app. Of course, the metadata API, because she obtained AWS keys from the EC2 metadata service. Data from a cloud storage object, because it was improperly secured and could then be fetched and controlled locally. a valid account, because through that vulnerability, she got access to a highly permissive IAM role. And of course, copying data with AWS just gave her some automated exfiltration, all valid techniques once she had that vulnerability down. Now, I'm not from the AWS world. I'm more focused on Azure, but I wanted to make sure that we all understand the same thing. So for those listening in and maybe more on the Azure side, when I say EC2, it's very much compatible to a VM in Azure. The S3 bucket is like a storage blob in Azure. The Lambda function could be like an Azure function. A step function I would call a logic app in Azure. The IAM role may be an identity in Active Directory. And like guard duty would be compatible to the HP family of products that Microsoft has. So this is something I want to get clear before we move on. Now, the diagram of the tech was like this. She had a covert name called Erratic with a certain IP address from which she was trying to access that EC2 instance that had the vulnerability. She was posing herself through the web request as the metadata service, and thereby getting the credentials from that IAM role that had S3 full access, thereby being able to generate a token, and that token could then be used to create a profile to use that S3 full access IAM role going forward, getting then access to the S3 bucket that contained sensitive data, and then exfiltrating the files that were held in that bucket through copying them back to her local storage. So the diagram of the tech, again, the 5 Metra TTPs and how it went down. Now, what she did is she, again, requested to the web server and then setting the host header to the IP address of the EC2 metadata service, which in general, most cloud platforms have as this IP address, 169.254, and then repeat it. And what you get back is the response. Once that command is successful, it will give you the access key ID, the secret access key, and the session token of the IAM instance. That's a profile that's attached to this EC2, which apparently was an S3 full access at that time. And just to make sure we're on the same page, this vulnerability has been patched. So this is just for learning purposes, and again, how Azure Sentinel could take that information later on. Now that she had that role and those credentials, she could assume that role, which had S3 full access, and then use that token to work her way further, enumerate the S3 buckets, identify which ones looked interesting, maybe browse around in those buckets, and once it was identified, enumerate and download the sensitive files to the local machine, and then she could work with the data. And apparently those became the April 21 files that were disclosed publicly, along with the method, this web request that you could then use for other people to exploit even further. So, okay, we got this breach. There's a lot of data. If we had Azure Sentinel, and we had maybe some Azure workloads, some on-prem workloads, and maybe AWS workloads, how would we then handle this? Well, guess what? Azure Sentinel loves AWS. In the case that we have a full connector that we can take data from AWS and do the same advanced hunting that we have for our Azure resources, our on-prem resources, and anything else. The connector that's built in works off of AWS CloudTrail. So you enable AWS CloudTrail with an S3 bucket behind it. That will capture the platform events, the server events, and so forth. And then those will be taken quickly into Azure Sentinel through the connector. There is optionally a way to also get down to the object level logging if you want to get more information on the S3 bucket and what's happening in the bucket, or maybe in your Lambda function. And then you're using Logstash as a complementary solution alongside the connector to get the object level logging in. However, the connector will quickly start supporting it natively, so then you don't even need Logstash anymore. Now, the pros and cons on collecting object level logging versus more platform and server logging was described by Netscope, and I've put the URL in here for you to understand what's the difference and whether or not to pursue maybe object level logging for your environment. Now, again, the connector's built in. It uses AWS CloudTrail, so something you pay for at AWS and configure on that side of the house. The only thing we need from Azure Sentinel is read access through CloudTrail. So the AWS CloudTrail read-only access IAM policy. And you will get a new table in Azure Sentinel called AWS CloudTrail. The connector itself is free, but you do pay for the events that get ingested into Azure Sentinel. And it really depends on your platform how many of those you would get. Now, the great thing about the connector is it also gives you a lot of hunting queries. So you can take these templates and understand, I want to get alerted on failed logins in AWS console, but perhaps a subsequent success logon to Azure AD, or maybe some ingress and egress settings. And on the right-hand side, you already see the KQL, the Kusta query language that we take to get the alert up and running. And the interesting part is there's alerts and analytics specifically for AWS. But as you can see in the description, there's also ones that we combine with other sources, again, to get richer use cases. There are some dashboards. We call them Azure Workbooks. There's a user activities, there's a network activities that you can just take and then visualize and maybe drill down deeper on what's happening. And again, these would then be the things that you would find in your hunting if you saw this attack happening mapped against the data sources. So we would find the host IP address, the EC2 instance, the metadata service that you was trying to replicate, the IAM role, the S3 bucket, etc., etc. So AWS CloudTrail will give you a lot of information. If you want to dive deeper, then it's optional to get the S3 bucket object level API logging in. Yeah, that's probably how you feel now with so much info me giving you. No, just kidding. It's time for the GOAT. And for those who don't know, the GOAT is a free, it's a repository by Rhino Security that mimics the setup that has the vulnerability that Capital One experienced. And that's easy because then you can test, learn, and work with it. If you want to replicate it, then let's switch and I'll show you. I'll share my screen again. I'll take the terminal. Where are we? Share screen. Here's the terminal. Yeah, there it is. Great. So I'm running this Docker container called Cloud Goat. And if you want to run it yourself, it's from Rhino Security Labs, and you can just say Cloud Goat latest, and you'll have the same setup. And you could look it up on GitHub. I have an EC2 instance running that has this specific vulnerability so that we can mimic it. And what I would do is say I'll curl, so I'll do a web request to this specific IP. I'll pose as the metadata service. You can see it by the end, the IP address that I'm using. And like you see, we actually get the profile back. If I use that profile now to request information from the profile, I actually get an access key ID. I get the secret access ID and the token. So I can now say AWS configure. Let's create a profile called Erratic, the covert name she was using. I'll give the access key ID. Here we go. I need the secret. Here we go. And then, of course, I also need the token if I want this to work. So what I'll do is I'll add that to the credential store. Oh, sorry, that's the region. And the format is JSON. I'll add the token, AWS session token. Try to do underscore token we just saw, and now I can say AWS S3, give me all the buckets for using this token. It actually gives me 2 buckets in my environment. Azure Sentinel, that's the one that's now behind AWS CloudTrail. And actually the S3 bucket that has the card holder data. And of course, you could imagine if I then run an S3 sync, actually start downloading the files from that bucket locally, and I can work with that data. So that's really the way she was abusing that vulnerability, and then came to all of that sensitive data, and again, use the Cloud Goat Docker container to understand more and try it out yourself. So let's get back to the presentation. There we are. So if you're in Azure Sentinel and you want to hunt for these TTPs, these techniques, tactics, and procedures, you could just use the search function, which is quite broad. It just takes you in any of those tables and says, I want to understand if this IP address has been seen in AWS CloudTrail, because maybe you saw some suspicious IP address. Or you could narrow it down to, hey, I want to understand more information about the S3 bucket object level activities. Give me from that source IP address the one that has get object, and it then gives you information about the account, the IAM profile, etc., etc. Now, you would probably say, well, if I'm not proficient yet in KQL or AWS hunting, then the Microsoft Threat Intelligence Center Mystic has published a couple of ready-to-go hunting queries on GitHub. If you go to Azure/Azure Sentinel, hunting queries, AWS CloudTrail, then there's a couple you could just take to really understand how to work with these hunting queries and get a better understanding of the table and what's in them. Now, if you put them all together, and let's say we create 4 alert rules for each of these steps that she just was doing, then we could actually see that in the UI of Azure Sentinel. It would give us information on the S3 bucket that was compromised, the IP address that then was used, the IAM role that was then abused, and again, the T numbers, so the MITRE type TTPs attached, and again, the timeline going from a low privileged alert to a high privileged alert. And again, that's the power of a use case. If this is combined, then we understand this is a P1. We need to respond quickly and immediately before further problems, or even use playbooks, Azure Logic apps to automate some of our responses when we want to isolate stuff, maybe block egress or any of the other actions you could think of. Now, if you then map the Azure Sentinel capabilities back to the attack matrix specifically for AWS, this is what you would see. We would have a couple of hunting queries that would cover things in initial access, execution, and other phases. We would have low score alerts in some, medium score alerts in some, and then some high when we see, for instance, a known IP or some threat intel that we can then map to what's happening in AWS CloudTrail. So this is really quite neat that we can cover quite a bit of the MITRE attack matrix. Now, if you want to understand more on this type of attack, so the SSRF, AWS had a great session on their re:Invent event that was late last year in November. On the defenses you could do maybe against open firewalls, reverse proxies, and SSRF. So, and the things they did to enhance EC2, because they of course took proper measures. And this is certainly worthwhile, and I have the link in the deck. So once I share it online, you'll get to see the link and so much more. So let's see Azure Sentinel in action. I'll switch back to the browser. Share screen. There it is. We're back in where we just were, the MITRE attack matrix. Again, on Rhino Security Labs, you find CloudGoat, which is then the one you could test with. And again, this was the EC2 instance I was using, the IP address, and of course the S3 bucket. Here we go, that we just saw in the console or in the terminal, that CloudGoat creates and then gives you some tests files to work with if you want to exploit it yourself. Now, going to Azure Sentinel, for those who haven't seen it, this is Azure Sentinel, the overview page, and I can go into data connectors, maybe into AWS. Here we are. And you see on the right-hand side that there's data being ingested. There's from 15 minutes ago. It gives me 2 workbooks, so 2 dashboards, 2 hunting queries, and actually 14 alert rule templates that you can take. And if I open the connector page, you give your role that's then connected to AWS CloudTrail with only the read-only rights. What happens is that data starts ingesting. So if we go into logs and have a look at the raw data, click on AWS CloudTrail, you'll see that data gets ingested based on the activities that are happening in your platform. And we can drill in and get information about what's happening there. If you did enable the object level logging for the S3 bucket, same thing, you can have a look at the raw data, every event, and so forth, maybe to work with, create some of your own queries, some of your own alert rules, and dive a bit deeper. Now, if you go into analytics, that's where you find the templates for the alert rules. You go to rule templates and maybe search on AWS or filter it down another way. These are the ones I can then use. For instance, this one that says, well, you want to monitor the changes to your AWS Elastic Load Balancer. It even gives you a link, for instance, to an article on Medium on why that is necessary and relevant and what you would be able to see. It will also give you some information on the query it's using, and you can just say create rule, maybe change some of the description if you want to, enable it, and then things like automated response, and you're good to go. So it gives you quite a bit of flexibility and speed to get started. And like we said, the workbooks would be dashboards. If I go to AWS, view saved workbook, then you would see some of the things you could drill into. So just to conclude, this is really easy to connect to AWS. And if you are a multi-cloud user, it might be worthwhile to understand if Azure Sentinel can help you become more secure. Last couple of slides, and then we're good to go. Here we go, share screen again. And it's been said, if you want to follow me, maybe on some of the other Azure Sentinel stuff, maartengoed.org. If this summer you need something to listen to, I have a podcast called Security Insiders with a lot of interesting folks that give their perspective, like one of the legal counsels from Microsoft, a threat hunter from Mystic, third-party people like Olaf Hartong, who worked on Splunk and such. So be happy to refer you to that. So with that, I just have some resources put in the deck. If you want to read this all back, then you can take those resources and links. And special thanks to Ashwin that did a lot of the research for AWS logging to Azure Sentinel. So I guess this is the way.
Awesome. Thanks, Martin. That's great. Just to get some insight into Azure Sentinel and what it can do. Don't forget, everybody, if you're watching, just fire any questions you have for Martin into the chat, and we'll ask them. There's a question actually from Steve, who asked a question around the AWS templates, and he was asking, are the AWS templates pre-built into Sentinel, or are they custom built or loaded in from some open source library somewhere?
Well, you'll find them in the Azure Sentinel UI, so you can just take them from there as templates. So you could consider that as built in, but it's being backed by a GitHub repository. So that's the one, Azure/Azure Sentinel, where you can actually find those alert rule templates, hunting query templates, as files you can take, and then you could either work off of those or create your own. Or there's a lot of third-party repos, and we built a PowerShell module called AZ Sentinel, where you can actually automate a lot of the stuff, getting alert rules into Azure Sentinel. And yeah, so they are built in, but you could take a ton of third parties and extend on those.
Nice. And just on top of that, just remind me, because I've not looked in the Sentinel portal for a while. This is the alert rules, right, where we're like proactively looking for stuff. But what about the are there any all built-in workbooks for AWS as well?
Yeah,
Like
two of them. So user activities, network activities are two of them. Those are quite relevant, pivoting on the user, understanding what's happening in your platform, in your region. And second, the network activities, and taking it from a resource perspective. Those are two dashboards you get. Things like auto refresh, could put them on a big screen, or just use them if you want to start your hunting exercise.
Got it. Awesome. Yeah, ask any more questions in the chat, folks. I actually have a question. I know and I think I know the answer, but I'm going to check with you anyway. So in the investigations pane, I like how it like maps all the entities to give this nice graphical thing. For people that are using multi-cloud environments, say for example, I've got an EC2 instance running in AWS and I have a VPN connection over to Azure, or yeah, let's just say Azure for simplicity. Am I able to search for potential malicious IP or actor or an event, and then map that across multiple cloud environments, all within Sentinel?
Absolutely, yeah. So from the UI, it would depend if, let's say, that same IP address was used to attack both your AWS infrastructure as well as your Azure infrastructure, then that would be the linking pin, if you will, to get those visualizations to show both. But certainly if you're in the raw logs, if you're in the data explorer and using your KQL queries, you could just use functions like search or anything else to really search across all of those tables that would contain both AWS and Azure data.
Nice, awesome. And there's a question here from it says RebM6. I don't know if that's Rebecca, actually. It may be, but let us know in the chat if that's who I think it is, but it might be somebody else. But whoever it is, thank you for the question. It is, there you go, it is Rebecca. Rebecca spoke at our last meetup about applying the MITRE ATT&CK framework to AWS, so quite relevant to this talk, actually. And the question here is on the screen. Do you think you could build in any auto remediation activity on the back of an alert or finding in Sentinel?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things we see a lot is that people are using Azure Logic apps to build some logic and automation to follow up on an alert. It could be automatically triggered even. So if this type of alert happens, then this logic app should fire. And in that logic app, you could do whatever the logic app allows you to do, which is a lot. Maybe reaching back into the platform and then shutting down egress, isolating a machine, snapshotting it for forensic analysis. So you could use your imagination to fill up that logic app, but the logic app would be triggered as part of the alert firing, and that could be fully automatic.
Awesome, yeah, and actually, I've used Logic Apps a bunch, and you can do you can actually run custom code in there as well, right? So using an inline, I think they used to do inline code, but you can also branch out to an Azure function or something like that. So you can basically do anything as an automated remediation.
And we see it a lot, because if it's at night and there's something suspicious at a machine, and you want to at least isolate it, then have a look, and maybe then take further action, and a Logic App is the way to go.
Nice. Yeah, I saw a really cool example, and I didn't know this was actually in Logic Apps, but it was where it was like user activity. So they sent a query to the Graph API, which is a built-in connector, to get information about the particular user and who their line manager was. And then they sent an authorization email to the line manager using the 365 email plugin. And I didn't know the authorization email was a thing, but it's basically an email with two options. And then depending on what the recipient, which would be the line manager in this case, clicks, it would then they would say, yes, this is expected activity, or no, please block this user. Then you could do whatever action, right? Conditionally go and block that user in Active Directory or something like that. It was quite, I didn't know that function, but yeah, if you want to check out Logic Apps, anyone, it's amazing how powerful it is actually. You don't have to use any code either.
The one you mentioned would make a great demo in a future meetup.
Yeah, now you've just signed me up for some work. So thanks a lot, Martin. I think I'm not sure how long you're going to hang around for, but if anyone has any other questions, I'm sure Martin will be in the chat and hanging around. So yeah, feel free to ask any more questions. So thank you very much, Martin. I'll hand over to Steve, who's going to introduce our next speaker for the evening. So yeah, over to you, Steve.
Cool. Thanks, Dean. So yeah, quick introduction. We won't waste much time here, but actually really excited to have my colleague, Dennis here, joining us on the event today. And Dennis is going to talk about serverless SecOps automation in AWS. So how you can make the most of all the benefits of serverless to do security stuff in the cloud. But I won't steal any of his thunder. I'll let him dive into his content, and I'll join back afterwards for some Q&A. As always, please ask questions in the comments, and just like the previous talk, we'll get to them at the end of the session. Over to you, Dennis.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Again, happy birthday, Dean and Steve. A little belated. I'm going to talk about auto remediation. It has been asked just now. I will talk about auto remediation on AWS specifically. But in general, this what I'm talking about today, this basically works in a very similar way on all the major cloud platforms. My name is Dennis. I'm a developer advocate with Amazon Web Services. And yeah, today I will, let me see, my screen doesn't work as it should. Here we go. Okay. So today we're talking about a little bit about why security used to be pretty hard. It still is probably, but it used to be much harder. How it's different in the cloud. And then I'm going to talk about the basic security automation pattern that pretty much always is the same in the cloud. And I will do a live demo where I basically show you step by step the whole process for an auto remediation process. So why security traditionally so hard? Back in the day when we had data centers or servers under the desk, most of the time we had really real visibility issues. So you had many different servers, many different operating systems, all kinds of tools that somehow might have played together. Sometimes, very often, they didn't. It was really hard. You were gathering logs, all kinds of different logs from all kinds of different machines and software pieces of software, and you had a pretty low degree of automation. And in a traditional on-premises security model, you have to take care of everything yourself. Like you need to take care of the physical security of your facilities. You need to take care of the hardware security, software. You have to patch your software all the time. But also you have to secure the data on your machines and the applications that you were running. In the cloud, that's slightly different because we as AWS and the other major cloud providers as well, we take care of security off the cloud. So we take care of the physical security of the OS, of the virtual machines, but also of the physical facilities. We make sure that you have all the services that you need to take care of security in the cloud. So you as a customer are responsible for the security in the cloud. We take care of the security off the cloud, but we also help you taking care of security in the cloud by providing you over 200 services and features around identity, compliance, data protection, incident response, and all kinds of things related to security. And these are, most of our customers really say it's great that you have so many services, but where am I supposed to start? Because these are really many things that I need to learn. And actually, it is not that difficult, because if you look at the security process, first of all, you have to identify your assets. So you need to know what you have in terms of applications, data, and so forth. And then you need to protect these by applying permissions, applying the principle of least privilege, by encrypting data in transit and at rest. But you also have to detect deviations. You also have to detect if something happens that's not intended or even that's outright malicious. This needs to be reported in some way so that you can then respond. The best response is a planned response. So you would not want to respond in the moment, ad hoc. You would in a perfect world, you would have planned in advance what you would do in a certain case. So you would have a security incident run book that you could play. And then once you've responded to the incident, you recover again, you get your system back into a desired normal state. And today I'm going to look at a part of this process, at the detection, where we have a number of services on AWS, like AWS CloudTrail. Martin talked about this a lot in the last talk. CloudTrail basically logs all the API calls inside of AWS. So whenever you do something with AWS, you go through an API. You go through a control plane that makes sure that you are who you say you are and that you are authorized to do the thing that you're trying to do. So everything you do in the cloud goes through the API, and all of these API events are being logged by CloudTrail. Another service is Amazon CloudWatch, which basically has collects metrics, collects logs, and you can create alarms. But we also have Amazon GuardDuty, which is a machine learning-based intrusion detection system, which monitors your whole environment, the whole AWS account, and reports findings. And then there's something called Amazon Inspector, which is an automated security assessment tool, which you can run against your EC2 instances, so your virtual machines in the cloud. But you can also run against your on-premises instances or against virtual machines in other cloud providers. And then, of course, we have hundreds of partners that have tools and services around security in our network. Once you detect something, then you can report it, or AWS reports it by putting it into a service called Amazon Event Bridge. In the past, that used to be CloudWatch Event and CloudWatch Event Rules. It was part of CloudWatch, but we have built it out into its own service where you basically have a bus that all the events that happen can be put on and be delivered to downstream services to respond, like, for instance, Lambda functions or systems manager. And that's basically the pattern that you have. You have lots of detection services. Then you have that one thing in the middle, Amazon Event Bridge, and then you can respond as required. A practical example would be responding to undesired or maybe outright hostile API calls. Let's say AWS CloudTrail, which logs your API calls, is running in your account, and somebody tries to stop it to cover their trails so that what they're going to do is not being logged. This doesn't really work this way with CloudTrail. I get to that later. But let's assume somebody is trying to hide and go into stealth mode by trying to turn off CloudTrail. CloudTrail will immediately put this event, stop logging, onto Amazon Event Bridge. And on Amazon Event Bridge, I do have something called an event rule, which is basically matching a pattern against all the events that go through Event Bridge. And if it matches, in this case, if the source is CloudTrail and the event name is stop logging, then I can simply put a message on Amazon's simple notification service, which is a pub sub topic, which then can send an email, for instance, to an InfoSec team. But I can also trigger a Lambda function, which then goes in and restarts CloudTrail. So basically, it remediates, reverts what has happened, and also removes the permissions from the potentially malicious actor. And this is this process. I'm going to build this whole process inside of AWS right now. For that, I'm gonna switch screens. Give me a second. It's not doing anything. I'm not sure why. Oh, it isn't working now. I cannot share my screen, Steve. Maybe. Here we go. Here we go. Okay, so. Okay, now I hope everybody can see my screen. Okay, good. So what I'm going to log into an AWS account as a user named Dennis Trout, which has admin permissions. And and I'm doing something that you shouldn't do. I don't have MFA activated for a user that has admin permissions. So keep in mind, of course, this is a demo account, but usually you would want multi-factor authentication if you have admin permissions. And inside of this account, I have another user. I'll quickly go into Identity and Access Management. I do have another user called Bob. Both of us are in the group admins, and through the group admins, both of us inherit admin privileges. So we can do, I'll open this real quick. Both of us, Bob and I, as members of this group, can do everything. So we are allowed to do everything in regards to every service inside of this account. So imagine that Bob, I will log in as Bob real quick. Just maybe you can see up here, I have a small orange dot, a small blue dot. The blue dot will be Bob. I will log in as Bob.
Dennis, sorry, we're getting a bit of bad audio from you, a crackle, so it's quite hard to understand you. I don't know if there's a...
Okay. I hear the fan of my notebook. It's pretty loud. Maybe there's some...
Yeah, as soon as I jump in, it's gone clear. So...
Okay. So should I just move on?
All right. Yeah, carry on, and I'll let you know if we have the same problem.
Okay, cool.
We were outside, but we couldn't, so we had to jump in. Sorry, but you're better now.
Never mind. Okay, cool. Thanks. So right now I'm logged in as Bob. You can see Bob up here. And as Bob, I'm going to go into CloudTrail. And CloudTrail, basically, it collects all the logs. And it retains the logs by default, retains the logs for 90 days free of charge. But if you want to keep the logs, if you want to store them somewhere, you would have to actively turn CloudTrail on so that it keeps the logs inside, for instance, an S3 bucket. But if you don't do that, you will have all the logs of the last 90 days. I will just real quick have a look at the logs of Bob specifically. Here we go. So here I can see my logs, the events that the user Bob, basically the API calls that the user Bob did. Now Bob can go into Trails and open up the trail that I have activated that is storing the logs into an S3 bucket and simply turn it off. And this is something that should not happen. Of course, from a permissions perspective, in a production account, I would not give Bob permissions to do things that he's not supposed to do. So I would not give him permission to deactivate the logging. But maybe because of a misconfiguration or because of some case of privilege escalation, somebody might get the permission anyway. And I want to make sure that if that happens, I'm still able to remediate if somebody turns that off. So I'm going back into my account. And what I'm gonna do first is I will simply set up an SNS topic, a simple notification service topic. Because whenever somebody turns off CloudTrail, I want to get a mail. I want a mail to be sent to a specific security mail account. So I'll create a topic. I'll simply call it security. I can set up all kinds of things like encryption access policy and so forth. I will skip that for now. I will just create the topic. And the second step will be to create a subscription. And you can have all kinds of subscribers on an SNS topic. And whenever something is put on the topic, it is being distributed to all the subscribers. And in this case, I'm just setting up an email subscriber using my own email. Oh, I should be able to write my own name. I could also filter, set a filter policy so that I only get certain messages. So I can read in the chat that the sound is getting bad again, Stephen.
Yeah, I'm hearing it as well. Just the
maybe
coming in again has fixed it.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe you can still just follow the demo.
When your audio fixes. So I guess it's a problem with the mixing on this side. So if it happens again, I'll just join, say something, and then leave.
Okay.
Work around that bug. Okay.
All right, cool. So what I just did, I added a subscription, and this subscription is pending because it's email. I need to opt in, so I'll pick up my phone. And I got a mail somewhere. Should have. It takes a minute. Yeah. That's the demo gods. Now it takes some time. I will move on and I will confirm the mail in a minute once it's here. That's just a confirmation, just an opt-in. And so once that's being set up, whenever somebody turns, oh no, I missed one important piece. I need to put this together now. So the next step would be to set up a rule inside of Amazon EventBridge. As I said, Amazon EventBridge is a service that basically has an event bus. And you can set up your own additional event buses for your application. But in general, it has the default bus, and all the CloudTrail events, all the API calls are being put on this bus. And I'm going to set up a rule. I'll call it a CloudTrail stopped. And I'm going to set up an event pattern. I have a predefined pattern by service. So I'm going to look at AWS CloudTrail. And then I'm looking at the event type, and I can select all the events and then filter after the fact, or I can select specific events. And in this case, I will just look at the stop logging event. And as you can see up here, the event pattern, it has AWS CloudTrail as a source. It has, and it has the event name stop logging. So whenever an event that matches this pattern happens, I want it to be sent to an SNS topic. And you can see here, you can plug in all kinds of targets. In this case, I'll take the topic called security, which is the one I just set up. I can configure the input, can just use the event, or I could transform the event or do anything else. For now, I'll just take the event as it is because I want to analyze it in the Lambda function. So I will create this rule. I have it in here and I can see it's enabled. So whenever something happens that comes from CloudTrail and is a stop logging event, the event itself is being put on that topic. And now I'm going to check my email real quick, see if I got the confirmation mail. Of course I didn't. It might take a few more minutes, but that doesn't matter because that part is not really important. Just bear in mind that you can automatically send emails. What I want to show you now is how the actual remediation happens, because notification is one thing. I need to know that this happened, but I still want AWS to take care of the remediation for me. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to set up a Lambda function. And I'll just write a new function from scratch. I'll call it restart cloud, or I'll call it remediate stop logging. I will use Python. You can use all kinds of, for those not familiar with AWS, you can program, use for the Lambda functions, you can use .NET, Java, and so forth, but you could also deploy your own runtime. I'm going to use Python. And what's very important, every service, just like every user inside of AWS, by default has no permissions whatsoever. So for the Lambda function to be able to do something, I need to give it certain permissions. I do that by defining a role, an identity and access management role, which the Lambda function then assumes. And this role, I will create a role with basic Lambda permissions, which simply says that it's allowed to write logs. Now I create the function. And this just takes a few seconds. And here we go. So just real quick, this function has certain permissions that I gave it by creating that new role. And the permissions simply are, it's allowed to create a log group, create a log stream, and put log events onto the log stream inside of CloudWatch. And I mentioned CloudWatch before. This is the service where all the logs can be aggregated. The Lambda function itself does nothing. All that I'm going to do right now is really pick up the event, so the message that has been sent to the function, and print it. So when I set up a test event with just some keys and some values, I save the Lambda function and I test it with the test event. You can see down here, we have the output of the test event, basically. And in the next step, I want to actually do something with the Lambda function. The first thing I'm going to do is basically restart CloudTrail. Just real quick, Steve, can you read the code, or should I make it a little larger?
I think a little larger could.
Okay. Okay, I'll make it a little larger here. So here we have a Lambda handler, which picks up the event, and then it calls a function called restart CloudTrail event. And this looks into the, this first of all, it creates a CloudTrail client using the Bodo3 library. Bodo3 is the Python SDK for AWS. Bodo is the name of a specific type of dolphins, river dolphins that live in the Amazonas. And that's where the name of Bodo3 comes from. So what I do, I take Bodo3, the SDK, and create a CloudTrail client. And I also pick up the event that's coming in and look for this. And I'm going to show you inside of a test event. I'll configure test events, and I'll take this real quick. This is what the actual stop logging event looks like. I can actually show you this inside of CloudTrail. Let me see. I'll search for the event name. Stop logging. Oh, I've got some lag here. Okay, here we go. So this is what the actual event looks like. If I open it up, we have an event version, a user identity. This is important once we want to log, when we want to log out the actual user. We can see it was the user Bob. But also, and this is important, we have the name of the resource that has been stopped. So this is the Amazon resource name, the ARN, of the actual CloudTrail log that has been deactivated. To turn it back on, I need this information. And I'm picking it up here from the test event. Looking into the event, into the detail request parameters, into the name, and then I simply call on the through the SDK the start logging method using this trail ARN. So whenever this Lambda function is being executed with the trail name in the event, it's going to turn on the trail. The next thing I need to do before I forget it, is now add this as a target to my event rule. So I go back to my rules, open up the CloudTrail stopped rule, which is sending just a message on the SNS topic, and I'm going to add another target, which is, in this case, a Lambda function, the remediate stopped logging function. And again, I'm just gonna send the matched event to the function. Oh, right, don't need this. And I'm gonna update the rule. So now, whenever this rule is being triggered, the Lambda function is executed. And one thing that's very important, this function is now trying to start logging on CloudTrail, but if I look at the permissions, it is not allowed to do so. So I first have to go into the role and give it the respective permissions. So it has the basic execution role policy here, and I'm just going to add another inline policy where I choose the service CloudTrail. I'll define a specific action, which is write, a write action, stop logging, and over here, I could let the Lambda function do this to all resources, but I wanted to apply to a specific trail. And for this, I'm going to use the CloudTrail ARN that we have right here. Because as we saw in Martin's talk, if a function, just a second, if a function or an application is too permissive, somebody who broke into that, somebody who would compromise that in any way would be able to use those permissions. So the permissions should be really as tight as possible. I'll review this policy. I think I gave it the wrong permission. Yeah, I gave the stop logging permission. Just real quick, I wanted to be able to start the logging. Review policy can start.
And if you've got some more noise coming in again, I'm hoping that me joining might solve that.
So it's not coming through my mic as far as I can see. Yeah, I'm really sorry about that.
Yeah,
I hope
it's almost ununderstandable when it gets bad. It takes a little while. Oh, I think it's a problem with the platform potentially.
Yeah, my audio signal looks good over here. I'm really sorry about that. You might be able to follow me anyway. So I'm creating this policy. So the function can start the CloudTrail log, and once I reload this, we can see that in the permissions as well. So here we do have CloudTrail permissions, and we do have CloudWatch logs. And what I'm going to do right now is, if I get everything correctly, I will just have Bob turn off. So once Bob turns off logging, it should fire the Lambda function, so that when I reload this page, oh, come on. The next level turns back on again. And if I go into the Lambda function and have a look at logs because it's writing logs. If I look at this, I'll be able to see that it restarted trail. So noise again. Sorry about that. I don't have any noise on my signal. So here we go. Here we have latest log. Yeah, and here you see now that we started the cloud trail. Now this is work, but we also like to disable permission of the user and actually trying that off. And we can do that. We could technically do that by finding out which permissions the user has and removing them. But that could be pretty tedious. What I like to do is simply using a specific IAM policy that we have inside of our account. And go in there real quick, which is simply called deny all. And that's a managed AWS policy, which simply has a deny effect for all actions on all resources. It's really important to understand with IAM on AWS is an explicit deny always overrides any allow. So no matter how the policies are attached to the user, this policy, if I attach it, deny the user to do anything at all. So what my function is going to do in the next step, I'll make this larger real quick. What I'll do in my function is add and I'll copy this. Here we go. So what we're doing here is we're disabling the user. We're pulling the username from the event. We're also adding a client. Do that here. I'm missing a second. I am photo3.client IAM. So I do have a client, an IAM client, and I call the attached user.
Sorry to interrupt you. We literally can't hear a word you're saying. It's got really bad, the distortion. I think I'm keen to kind of continue if we can, but I think continuing isn't going to work right now. I don't know if it's possible for you to leave and rejoin the studio maybe, and we can see if that solves the problem.
I can try that.
Thank you. If everyone just bears around 1 minute so I can do a dance or something, a little bit of filler. And we'll see if Dennis can just join back in 1 second. Stay tuned, folks. Oh, you've put me on full screen, Steve. You really want me to do a dance? No, thanks. Sorry about the noise, everyone. We were trying to fix it. It didn't seem very obvious. So, Dennis, welcome back.
Yeah, thanks. How's it now?
That is much clearer. So, yeah, if you want to, let's try that again. Continue from where you were. If you share your screen, Steve will add you in. And folks, hopefully, crossing all fingers and toes that that solved the problem.
Yeah, I'm really sorry about that. I don't know if it's on my side or not. So what we're doing right now is we have an IAM client. We extract the username from the event, and we simply say attach policy to this user, and we take this policy, which is that's not the correct one. This one is it. I had one myself, but we can just take the managed policy from AWS. So I will just attach this deny all policy to the user, and this should effectively lock out the user. But for this to work, again, we need the Lambda function. It needs the permissions, and I'll go back to the Lambda function, to the permissions, and we need to add the permission to the Lambda function to actually attach a policy to a user. I'll do that here, adding another inline policy using IAM. And the action will be permissions management attach user policy. And you would also want to do that with a role in case you have roles that might do malicious things or unintended things. I will review, I need the resources, and I'll just let that on all resources for now, because I don't really know which user it's going to be. So I couldn't really say which user the Lambda function should be able to attach the policy to. I'll call this attach deny policy and create it. So now if I reload the Lambda function, again, we can see in the permissions that it also has the identity and access management permissions. So now, if everything is correct, fingers crossed, if everything is correct over here and Bob tries to turn this off again, and now we might have to wait a few seconds because IAM is one of the few of our services that are really global, because user management, role management, permissions, and so forth can be globally applied. It takes some time to propagate, but it really will be just a few seconds. And once I'm reloading this page, I will probably pretty soon get an access denied. I'll just reload it a couple of times. Here we go. We have the first output over here. Maybe there are still some caching issues in the browser. Now here we go. The user is not able to access this trail anymore. Actually, in fact, the user is not able to do anything anymore. Everything is being denied. So what we've done is we just built a Lambda function which picks up an event from CloudTrail and reverts the action, logs out the user. And I'll go back to the slides real quick. Here we go. So this is what we did. We have a stop logging, which goes through Amazon Event Bridge. We have an event rule that picks it up, that sends it. I should have gotten an email by now, and it also triggers a Lambda function. And just like this, you can do all kinds of things. Another example would be how to automatically respond to security findings. We do have a service called Amazon Guard Duty, which monitors your network traffic, DNS traffic, and CloudTrail API calls as well. And Amazon Guard Duty might find out that you have that there seems to be data exfiltration happening, DNS data exfiltration for EC2 instances. So this is being put on top of Amazon Event Bridge. We have an event rule where you can see it's looking for the source of Guard Duty, and it's looking for a specific finding type of DNS data exfiltration. And again, we can send an email, we can put a message on a topic to send an email to the InfoSec team, but we could also trigger a Lambda function that then does a number of things. And this can go through the runbooks that you have defined from your incident response process, where you analyze the EC2 instance. So you might log into the instance using AWS Systems Manager. Looking at the processes, running a PCAP, maybe running a line to extract the memory, then making a volume snapshot of the disk, and store the disk into a forensics account. And then you might want to isolate the instance from the network and do all kinds of things. And this is basically how security automation works in AWS. You do have all kinds of services that can detect if something deviates from normal, if there's some malicious activity, if there's some suspicious activity, put it onto the event bridge, and then use the services inside of AWS, and you can use all kinds of services to respond. And that's it. If you want to know more about security on AWS, we do have free training, and we also do have a certification that specializes in security on AWS. There's a link on the slide. AWS training/security. And now, thank you very much. I'm Dennis. I'm out of AWS, and now I'm for questions. Do you have any?
Okay, hi Dennis. Thank you so much for the talk. Remember, everyone, if there's any questions, please ask them in the chat. I'm just running this background here. Get rid of your slides. There you go. Dennis, I'm not sure if your mic is still being funny or not. It had a slight crackle at the end there for me, but I think I made it through the last slide. So, actually, is it just me? I don't know if that's Dean, are you seeing the same problems? Sorry, Dennis, if you try and speak.
Yeah, I can try and speak. Say something.
Yeah, I'm not making much of what you're saying at the moment. It seems to have gone super distorted. So it could be a connectivity issue or a platform issue. But what we do is I'll probably save the Q&A. I know you're in the Twitch chat. If you've got questions, you can answer by text, and then that will save any kind of bad audio experience. But for those that are still around, we're going to thank Dennis, and then we're going to move on to our quiz, which is the third best thing of the night after the two talks, of course, but always very fun. So I'm going to bring Dean back in, and we're going to just talk about what prizes we've got for you this week, and then we'll run through the quiz. Dean will share his screen. Thanks again, Dennis. Okay, Dean's back. How are you? So quiz time, the best part of the day. So Dean's going to share his screen in a second. Dennis is going to help with any questions in the chat while we just get this set up. And the giveaways for this week are as follows. First place, we have it's become a staple of this event, we have a Ring security camera.
Not to be confused with Ring doorbell. It's not a doorbell.
No, it's not a doorbell. It is a security camera for indoors, I believe. Don't put it outside. It might get broken. And then for second and third place, we have the two copies, hard copies of the book, Ghost in the Wires, which is Kevin Mitnick, one of the most famous Black Hat hackers books around his story around hacking. So we have a kind of info security focused giveaway for you there. So I'm going to get this off the screen so you can see the QR code. You can see the QR code there. Dean, you're able to paste the link to that in the chat so people can click on the quiz link and join. There we go.
Yeah.
Right,
I noticed Rebecca's here, previous winner. Jim Lamb was there. I think I saw he's a previous second or third place. I think he received a book last time. There he is, Airwalk Jim, still striving for first place. We'll see if tonight could be the night.
Yeah, we'll just let a few people join. All right, we've got more than 3 players, so that's good. That means it's a challenge.
Yeah. So if you haven't been at the event before, it's your first time, thank you for joining. If you have been before, you'll be familiar. We can't afford a Kahoot license, so we use a free open source alternative from a CMS called Sanity.io, and they have a serverless based quiz. So that's exactly what you're seeing right there. So it's called Squizzy. If you've ever used Kahoot, then you'll be familiar with this. It's a real-time quiz. So you'll see the questions on the main screen here, and then you'll answer them. Ideally, you want to be on a mobile device, really. So you can tap the one. It'll be multiple choice questions going through. Somebody asked for the link. I did just post it, but I probably posted it exactly the same time as you answer it, Slipped Exit. So hopefully you've got that. If not, shout and we can post that again. Or you can just scan this QR code with your phone. Couple of prizes. We've got a few players coming in. We'll give it a moment. I think we've got a few more streamers than current players. So assuming everybody's playing, we'll give it a couple more minutes. I just want to take this opportunity, we haven't done this yet tonight, to just thank our sponsors for supporting the event. They really make this happen. So thank you to Sumo Logic, our premium sponsor who sponsor us. And when we're back in person, they sponsor us for our venue at Aviation House in London. They really help us out there. And also to InfoSAS. So the InfoSAS are providing the budget for the prizes that we're giving away. So I really, really appreciate them for helping us out with that. Otherwise, you'd be doing a quiz for no prizes. So that would be fun. So yeah, thanks to our sponsors for helping us out with that and making the event possible. All right, so anybody can't get. Sorry, Steve.
Player seems pretty static. So
yeah, if anybody can't get in, I'll give you like 30 seconds. Just like message in the chat if you can't get in or you're still trying to get into the quiz. Let us know. If not, I'll start the quiz in 30 seconds. It's going up to 18.
the link again, Dean.
Cannot see the link. Can you see the link in the screen there, Slipdexic? Or scan the QR code with your mobile? Are you able to do that?
You can paste it back in the chat. Again, I think we have a bot on, so Dennis can't post he's not a mod.
Sorry, let me paste
Twitch channel. So sorry, Dennis, you're.
Just literally just posted the link into the chat, Slipdexic. Dennis's link has come through distorted.
Yeah, it's redacted.
There we go. So I'm expecting that to maybe go to 18, 19. There you go. I'm guessing that's Slipdexic has managed to join the quiz. Right. So I'm going to, without further ado, we're going to get started. We've got 8 questions in the quiz, and I'm going to start the game, and then I'll read out the question, but you'll also see it on the screen. So be prepared. All right. So which of these logs can you ingest into Azure Sentinel for free? Office 365 activity logs, Azure Web Application Firewall logs, AWS CloudWatch logs, and Azure Behavioral Diagnostic logs. It's worth saying, actually, the quicker you answer, the more points you get. You could have great success by just randomly picking answers and hitting them as quickly as possible. If you're lucky, you could win.
I think we forgot last time we were going to reduce the time to answer questions.
Yeah, apologies for this. You have to.
Still not everyone's answered. Coming in.
Everybody's answered. There we go. It goes on to the next one anyway. Most people got it right. So people went for Office 365 activity logs. A few people there. So Mike has taken the lead there. 150 points to Mike. Nice and quick. Yes, Office 365 activity logs. There are some other logs that are available. Azure AD activity logs and a few others. It actually changed. Martin was telling me it actually changed today. So there was an announcement today changing some of the stuff that's free and some of the stuff that isn't free. So yeah. Next question. If I'm a new or existing AWS customer and I don't have Cloud Trail set up, do I need to enable anything to view my account activity? And the options here are yes or no, if you hadn't worked that out yet.
It's too easy, mate. Give them more
I
challenge.
think you wrote this question.
No, I gave you 4 answers and you turned it into 2.
There might be another question with 4 answers in it coming up.
There we go.
All right, 19 questions in, 19 answers in, sorry. And Steve, you can explain that? The AWS man?
Yeah, this change happened a few years back. That now you have account activity in your account, free of charge for you to browse in the console or the CLI if you don't take any action to set it up. So you have those logs available for you.
Nice. All right, next question. Everybody, buzzers at the ready. Last time, Dean, myself, created this quiz on the day of the event. Did he do the same today, or was he more prepared? Yes or no? What do people think? Do they think that I was more prepared at this event, given how busy I've been in the build up to this, or do they think I procrastinated and created it on the day? I'm interested to see the perception. All right. Yes. Oh, nobody trusts me to be more prepared. Obviously, I did it on the day. I did it earlier today. I created the questions.
Maybe change it to did Dean do it during the event?
Yeah, I didn't. It wasn't quite that bad, but it was close. It was close. I'll give you that. So Mike's taken the lead. Mike's been at the lead for the whole time, right? We've got Nakati, we've got B, very cryptic name there. It's in third place. Joe Bart Johnny's almost up there, so we'll see if we start seeing the change in the leaderboard. I've lost my mouse. There we are. All right, next question. Which of these roles is most likely to perform threat hunting? An intelligence analyst, a forensic analyst, a SOC analyst, or a police officer hunting the streets for threats?
Where do you choose these images from?
Like some free, like open source thing, and I was looking for like hunting, but it was mainly like pictures of animals and like old dudes with guns and stuff. So I thought that yeah, this came up when I searched for the word threat. Threat was the keyword, I think. And there you go. Most people got this right. It would be a SOC analyst that would be most likely to perform threat hunting. Some of those other roles might do it. I definitely think the police officers might be, if they had more time on their hands, hunting for threats on the street. But I don't think they call it that. I think they call it policing, actually, if they were doing that. So, right. So we got Mike still keeping the lead. I think B was third last time. Steps up. P Maddox is up there, 352. Slip Dexic is Daryl. That's who that is. He's got the link now, and he's there in 5th place, ready to take the lead potentially on the next question. Right, what's up? What's up next? How many days of account activity installed in AWS Cloud Trail by default? 30 days, 45 days, 60 days, or 90 days? We've got all the answers here. 18. There was 19 players, I think, in total. Yeah, there's a little oops coming in the chat there. Yeah, I saw that coming earlier. I'm not sure if you saw my body language in the reaction there. Yeah. Somebody gave this away in the chat earlier, so I'm expecting them to fly back into the leaderboard. So we'll see, Joe Bart John, if that's the case.
Well, I think the problem is they gave the answer to everybody.
Let's see if everybody got it right. In 3, 2, 1. Almost everybody got it right. Not everybody's reading the chat, but I'd say I think that's probably one person went for whatever green was, and 2 people went for red.
Yeah, and Dennis did mention this in his presentation.
He did.
So
you should have been listening.
Tough question for an Azure guy, but you know.
Yeah, Ollie, I'm not sure. Someone put it in the chat. I said apart from that one. There you go, Ollie. I'll let you off. Yeah. I mean, the Sentinel one was an Azure question. We might have some more in there for you, Ollie. You just have to stick around and see. Right, what does the K stand for in KQL, which is the query language used in Azure, Ollie, Sentinel? Is it Cloud, Kibana, Kubernetes, because it solves everything, or Custo? We'll see what the how this comes in. KQL is the query language which is used to query the logs that actually sit within, well, multiple services in Azure, the Azure Log Analytics or Azure Data Explorer, but which is the underlying log system that Azure Sentinel runs on for your security or activity logs that you do security detection on. Yeah, so most people went for Custo. There's a couple others in there. Some went for Kubernetes. I mean, it does solve everything. But it's not the name of the query language for Azure Sentinel. KQL is named the Custo query language. Apparently, Martin was actually telling me earlier that this was the internal project name for Custo Data Explorer, which was the data explorer that was internally used in Microsoft. And I believe Custo is an explorer, hence the data explorer thing and the connection. So there's the relation there. All right, how many questions have we had? Is anyone keeping track? Mike's been a solid leader here. I mean, the rest of it's changed up. Ollie's had a couple of Azure questions and he's jumped up to 4th. So I know Ollie will be happy about that. Jim's climbing up. He might get himself another book. He needs to go buy himself a shelf before long. Let's see what happens
next month.
We'll give a shelf away at the next event for you, Jim. Right, let's go to the next question. All right, which of these car manufacturers suffered a cyber attack last month? Was it Volkswagen, Hyundai, Kia, or Honda?
And you put a
And
Mustang.
that is not, that's a picture of a Mustang. I wanted to get a picture of a car that wasn't in the list of options. I didn't want to put any hints or clues in there. You see,
Fair.
it wasn't Ford. That's a pretty old Mustang, actually.
Yeah, we're getting close to the end, Joe Bartron.
Question 7 or 8. There you go. So yeah, most people there got the correct answer. A few people thought it was I think red was Volkswagen. It was actually Honda. They were subject to an attack on. They believe it was a ransomware attack. I can't remember the name of the attack now that happened to Honda. They announced it, but they insisted that there was no data breached at all during the attack. So hope that's true, and there was no data breached.
And Mike's still at the top with the same score as last round, I think. That's how much of a lead he had. But Aman is...
so Mike potentially got that wrong, but he still held the lead position. Wow, there you go, Mike. You're sort of losing the last question here now. I mean, that would be devastating, wouldn't it? Let's have a go. Right, so last question coming up. Next question. And I cannot remember for the life of me what it is. Oh, I do know. In the last 12 months, that was meant to say months, which percentage of UK firms have sought external information or guidance on cyber threats? And this is according to the UK government 2020 cyber report. 40%, 53%, 75 or 95?
Yeah, it's the ECANS.
Yeah, the ECANS ransomware is what it was believed to be for the Honda attack. Thanks, Ollie, for reminding me of that.
They've not confirmed it yet, though, have they?
I think it was, most researchers believed it was that. I'm not sure that Honda have actually confirmed that was the attack. Yeah, so which percentage of UK firms or companies have sought external information or guidance on cyber threats? Most people got that right as well. Questions are too easy. And looks like Mike potentially got that right as well, as we flies into the end there winning. I actually I'd not read it yet. It was released in March, the 2020 cyber report, I think it's called, from the government. I'll find a link and share it. If anyone wants, just ping me and I'll find a link, or you can just Google it. It had a bunch of interesting stats in it around how companies are addressing it, how important it was to senior leadership. And this particular statistic was interesting. 53% of them sought external information or guidance on cyber threats. So very close there. I think Mike's a complete runaway winner, I think. I don't think that first position changed throughout the whole thing.
If you press finish, does it calculate anything extra? Or is that...
Oh, I forgot about the bonus prizes. No, I'm joking. There's no bonus points. This is the actual standings. It'll just show the
right?
top three.
All right, cool. It's the same score. All right, great stuff. So congratulations, Mike, Aman, and Flo. You all have won prizes. You need to send us an email at this email address, and we will get in touch, get your contact details, and post those prizes out to you. So yeah, I'm just thinking, yeah, wherever you are in the world, we'll get them to you. So don't worry, we'll make it happen. I know we're online now, so we're outside the bounds of London. So if you're remote or outside of the UK, don't worry, we'll find a route, a mechanism to get them to you.
Yep. So congratulations, Mike, on winning the Ring camera, and Aman and Flo on winning the book. We'll work out getting that to you. If you drop us that email and send us your drop us an email, we'll need your name, your address, because we'll just ship it directly to you from Amazon, probably. So yeah, if you do that, send over. So yeah, thanks everyone for joining Cloud Security London for our third meetup. We really appreciate everyone coming along. I hope you really enjoyed it. Our next meetup is in 2 months, and now I'm trying to think of the next date, Steve. We're on the first Wednesday
of every other
month. That means we'll be the first Wednesday in
September.
Yeah, so we'll actually be, this is July, right? So we'll be the first Wednesday in September. So whenever that is, but go over to cloudsecuritylondon.com. That will take you to the meetup page and tell you where you are. Don't forget to just share us any feedback. It's all welcome, how we can make it better. And the other thing I just want to say is if anybody wants to speak at the event, anybody wants to contribute, we've had a whole bunch of people speaking. We've had new speakers, we've had seasoned speakers, we've had people that have never spoke publicly before, and we're willing to kind of help you out if you need to, or whatever. If you're new to speaking and you want to experiment, it's a nice friendly community for you to do that. Or if you're a seasoned speaker and you have some great content you want to share, then let us know. Again, same email address, hello@Cloud Security London, and we'll be sure to get in touch and speak about that. Thanks again to our sponsors, Sumo Logic and InfoSAS, and we'll see you at the next one. Just one quick kind of shameless plug. If you haven't had enough of these two ugly mugs on your screen, tomorrow night, we're doing a Brian Brothers stall on the Serverless Days Amsterdam meetup. It's actually online, so anybody can join it. And both Steve and I will be delivering different sessions on serverless security, that security topic. I'm going to be talking about serverless security beyond HTTP, so looking at how we can secure our functions, etc., when they're not typical web apps with HTTP triggers that we can invoke and test with traditional tooling. And Steve, you're going to be talking about security operations with serverless, right?
Yeah. Some how to use serverless tools to scale your security operations. Do we have a link?
And I'll send a link to the event tomorrow in the chat. Yeah, I'm going to send it in. It's a Central European time, so it's slightly earlier. It'll be at 5:15, I think it starts here, UK time. Tomorrow night, Ollie. I'll just send in the link in now. You can sign up on Meetup. Yeah, my computer's on a go slow, but I'll send the link in the chat and you'll be able to see it as soon as that's pasted.
Yeah, that's it. Maybe we will be in person.
There you go. So thank you again for that. We will have the talks back online pretty soon. We get them up on YouTube for you if you want to watch them back, or friends or whatever. And we'll see you at the next event in a couple of months, and keep in touch on Meetup, and look forward to seeing you in the next one.